And we are live. Hello and welcome everybody to Badass College Apps with Admissions Mom, where we talk about applying to college and then we stop and take a breath. Because that's an important thing to do in this stressful world of college admissions that we have going on today. I am super excited to have two amazing guests here with me today, Jess and Sawyer from Virtual College Counselors, to talk about AP test and how they kind of fit in with college admissions. And I know right now a bunch of people are feeling really stressed out about it and what to do, where to move forward. And so we're going to try to hit all your questions. Those of you in the chat today, please drop in, let us know how you're doing, say hello, ask your questions, give your comments, help each other out. You guys are always great about that and giving your own advice, and that's really helpful. And so we appreciate that. And those of you who are watching in the future, welcome. And so glad you're here, and don't hesitate to send questions to us and we'll be letting you know how to do that too. All right. So Jess and Sawyer, I'm going to let you introduce yourselves for a minute, give a little background. Who are you and what are you doing here?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we both have our solid, short, sweet, canned responses for how we got to where we are. So my name's Sawyer. I'm one of the co-founders of Virtual College Counselors along with Jess. Like most people, I did not wake up as a 5-year-old one day and go, man, I want to be involved in college counseling and college admissions. Truthfully, I am a first-generation college student, so my search was a little bit like a bull in a china shop, but I was fortunate enough to have a very supportive community. I ended up going to a school that I really loved. And ultimately, I got involved in education through working in college admissions. So I worked at a small private liberal arts school called Hendrix College. It's one of the colleges that changed lives. If you're familiar with that book, if you're not, you should check it out for small liberal arts schools. And truly fell in love with working with students and families and helping them through the process. So spent 4.5 years at Hendrix. Ultimately wanted to work in the high school side to work closer with students. And as I was making that transition, almost in the middle of interviews, COVID hit. And so I was fortunate enough to know Jess, who had a budding independent college counseling practice. And so I ended up working with her, and we rebranded as Virtual College Counselors. And I'll let her talk a little bit about her story.
Yeah. So my background's actually forensic psychology. Sounds super interesting. Yay. Really in action. There were pieces that I absolutely loved, and a lot of it's just really emotionally draining. It was really hard to be a therapist for clients who are court mandated to see you. Big shocker, I know. Engagement in therapy is the only way therapy works. I know, it's crazy. But I kind of stumbled through my college journey and didn't really love where I wound up, and kind of became a point person while I was still in school when I started doing a college search to transfer. And that's when I kind of started discovering what existed out there. And ultimately, I wound up staying and graduating a year early, going straight to grad school and all of that. But at the end of the day, the one common thread through all of my jobs, as a research faculty member at CU Boulder, serving on scholarship committees, I worked for the Army as an operations research analyst, as a forensic psychologist. I ran the juvenile fire setters program, lots of different things. And the one common thread was helping people figure out what their next step is, whatever that looks like, whether that's, elite, private, highly selective college admissions, or, trade school, equally awesome, incredible opportunities across the board. So that's kind of how we guide our students through this process.
And if people out there, kids, parents watching this, if they want to reach out and get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, the best way would be our website. So it's about as easy as it gets, www.virtualcollegecounselors.com. And just about every social media except for TikTok, same thing. We managed to grab Virtual College Counselors at all of those. So any of those can be a way to contact us, but the website is going to be probably the one that we see the most frequently.
Okay, great. And Carly just put your
awesome.
Thank you.
There. Thank you, Carly, for taking care of that for us. So that's how you can find Jess and Sawyer. They have a really cool website, by the way, and you have lots of great information just in general on your website that's available to everybody, right?
Yeah. And if there's a topic, we write a lot of blogs, and if there's a topic missing that you want to know more about, seriously, send us a message. We will write it for you. If you have the question, odds are hundreds of thousands of students have the same question.
Very true. That's such a good point. All right, Carly, tell us a little bit about you.
I'm Carly. I'm from Portland, Oregon. I'm currently at a community college majoring in communications. I'm also a moderator on r/applying to college, and I own the Discord server that's for applying to college. You can find me on either of those, but I'm mostly on the Discord server more often. So if you want to reach out, talk about communications, talk about applying to college, feel free to.
Yeah, and I'm also a moderator of the subreddit Applying to College. My name's Carolyn Kaplan, and I'm a moderator of the subreddit Applying to College, and I'm also a private college consultant. I work privately with kids as well as the kids on Reddit from all over the world, and Carly is kind of like one of our main moderators who kind of keeps everything going. And we're also grateful to have her there. And then the Discord is also a great place for those of you who haven't experienced it yet. If you're looking for a community of students who are, really interested in college admissions, which I would assume you are if you're here, that, a good place to kind of like find people who kind of want to nerd out about college admissions along with you. I don't interact that much, but I do kind of lurk and watch a little bit. I kind of feel like an adult invading the living room when I'm there sometimes, but it's a great place and very supportive of questions and answers. So Nathaniel says, I second the Discord. Yep. That's how I think Nathaniel even found this Badass College Apps. And then he says, literally amazing resources for anyone in their college journey. And I think that's both on the Discord and on Applying to College, the subreddit. You're going to be able to find so many resources. And if you do go there for the very first time, especially on Applying to College, I would spend some time. What's the wiki? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah, the wiki. The wiki where we have like all the resources really organized and you can just like sit and read through instead of trying to like figure it out by just looking at all the information. You can reach me at Carolyn at admissionsmom.college. Yeah, that's my email. Or find me on Reddit, Instagram, Twitter, or the subreddit A2C. So super happy to have all of y'all here. So Carly just put this discord.gg/A2C is the invite link for the Discord server. Cool. I didn't know that. Thanks, Carly. Okay. So we are here today to discuss AP tests because that's what's happening right now in so many kids' lives. And so
Carolyn?
Yes.
Should we bring Nicole on?
Oh, yeah. I didn't know she was here.
Hey, friends.
How long have you been here?
Oh, don't worry about it. I'm so sorry, everybody. Time zones and I are like not my greatest friend, but it's so good to see Jess and Sawyer and Carolyn. Hi. Happy Cinco de Mayo, everyone. Happy Thursday. Let's talk AP tests. I love talking about AP tests. I did not do all my AP tests. Like I really did.
Let's talk about you first.
Okay.
Introduce yourself. Who are you and why are you in this college admissions world?
Hey, everybody. My name is Nicole Pilar. I am a counselor with CollegeWise. I'm based in our Irvine office. I am obsessed with college admissions, as Carolyn can tell you. I am also a huge fan of the Applying to College subreddit. It's legit one of my favorite places to go when I'm like about to go to sleep. I feel like I'm like always checking in, making sure the kids are all right, as I like to say. I've been working with CollegeWise now going into my 6th cycle, which is crazy to think about. I graduated from Pitzer College in Claremont, so shout out to any folks wanting to like learn anything about the Claremont colleges. I will literally geek out for days. But otherwise, I'm so happy that I get to like see Carolyn and Jess and Sawyer. We all get to help all the masses, hopefully, I guess. I'm not sure how many folks are here, Carolyn, but I'm happy to answer their questions.
Yeah, we've got a few here, and then we'll have more who come in later, and more he'll even watch later. Nicole, if kids or parents want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so y'all can shoot me an email. My email is NicoleP@collegewise.com. So N as in Nancy, ICOLE, P as in Peter @collegewise.com. That's the most direct way to do that. I also help manage our TikTok account. It's @collegewise, and I do our Ask Me Anythings each week. So hopefully I'll be able to see some of y'all there.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so Carly just put up your email address. I just want to make sure that's right.
Carly. Yep, that's correct.
Okay, and then you say TikTok?
Yeah, I do our TikTok at CollegeWise. Pretty much everything is at CollegeWise. So you can all check us out on Instagram. I will say, I don't know about you, but like scrolling through the internet, I feel like sometimes like clips get show up on Instagram, and it's very awkward to like see my face sometimes when I like have our TikTok.
Nicole, I saw a clip of you. I was going through and you were talking, and my husband was like back over there, and I was watching it. He thought it was me.
I will say, I mean,
like
the hair we got right now.
Maybe,
you're not a day over 35, Carolyn. Stop.
Right.
The kids keep us young.
No, it was like he just kind of like from the shoulder. It was like, is that you? You watching yourself? I was like, no, I'm watching my friend Nicole. I can't watch myself. Like I refuse to watch myself.
I scroll very fast when I see them, mostly because I think I need to change up my lipstick choices, Sawyer, a little bit. I gotta change those next few videos.
Lipstick is the worst.
It really is.
All right, let's talk about AP test. So I'm gonna put us here. Let me move this down, this little thing. Okay, and then here we go. All right. So, and then Nicole, what we're going to do is I'm just going to kind of go through my slides, my talking points. Feel free to interrupt. Feel free to argue. Feel free to disagree. That's all good. But here's what I think, because we've had a lot of kids asking this, like, oh, I'm not ready for my test, or oh, like I didn't study as much as I thought I was going to, and I'm just not going to take it. And so I say, like, if you've already paid for it or you already signed up, just take it. Like, it's not going to hurt you to sit there for a little while and be uncomfortable, and maybe you're going to do a lot better than you think. But what do y'all think about that? Am I giving bad advice or?
No, I mean, if they are already paid for, I can think of almost no reason why you shouldn't go there. I mean, you have nothing really to lose per se. It can be a good experience where I know a lot of people who went in and were not trying to be humble. Like, I think we all know those people who are like, oh, I'm going to do horrible on this AP exam. And they walk out with like a 5 and you're like, okay, well, you didn't really think you were going to do that horrible. But I also know those people who go in, they're like, I actually think I'm going to bomb this. And they come out with like a 3 or a 4 and they're like, wow, I'm shocked. So like, you never know what's going to happen. I think especially if the resources have already been put out there, like take advantage of it.
With one caveat, when I was a senior, I knew that my school would only take one of the English tests, and I did not need to take the English Lit one because I already had the credit from English Lang. So I was able to transfer my test to a friend who didn't think to sign up for it, and then last minute realized that she could actually get credit for it. So if you're already a senior, you know where you're going, and you know that you've already kind of maxed out the credits that can transfer. If you desperately don't want to take it, then I approve of you not taking it.
Okay.
Provided it's not a huge financial issue for your family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm with Jess, and I think I would say one small caveat. I'm based out here in California, and I know the UCs in particular want to see that the student at least attempted the exam. They'd like to see a student report all of the scores, even if they're non-passing ones, just to see that they, essentially attempted the exam. I think with seniors, I always get a little bit, because I'm sure, Carolyn, you're getting this question of like, do I have to take the AP exam? And like, I go with Jess in the sense of like, if you already know you're not going to get credit, either do your friend a favor, which I love, Jess, that you did that. I wish someone had done that for me my senior because I forgot to sign up for one of them, but that's okay. But I also tell students, even if you're a senior and you're not necessarily going to get credit for it, it can also still be a really good exercise in the sense of kind of like high stakes testing. I remember back when I was in college, I had this one class, which I hated at the time, but the professor, it was a midterm and a final, and like that was it for your grade. There was no study guides, no tests, no quizzes, like no nothing. Like that was it. And I hated the class at the time, but it really taught me how to study and how to like embrace high stakes testing, which especially if you're a student that's interested in going to graduate school, or maybe you're going to medical school, like testing will be a part of your life. And so I don't know, maybe I'm like somebody that loves to plan. It's an occupational hazard for us college counselors, but I'm a big fan of just take the test, see how you do, report scores that maybe benefit you or not, depending on your list. But ultimately at the end of the day, like you paid the money, there's no harm, no foul for most schools.
Right. Yeah. And I think another thing, and that's not a point that I've made here, but that I've been thinking about is, I think for you students right now, I think especially the kids, who find us on A2C, who are just like such gunners and so driven and so used to being super successful at everything they do, to learn that like, it's okay to fail. Like it's okay to do something and not do like amazingly well. I mean, literally the worst thing that can happen is you're going to get like a 1 on a test that isn't really that important in the long run for you at this point in your life. You don't have to share it with anybody else. But like seeing that and then knowing that like, oh, like that happened and I'm fine, you know, like the world didn't end and, you know, it's all going to be okay. And I think having those experiences in your life, when you experience failure in some way and recognize that you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'll echo that too. Like something that I talk a lot about, we used to talk about this a lot when I worked in college admissions, was like learning to fail when you have a safety net is such a valuable thing, because even regardless of like where you are on the privilege scale or socioeconomic scale, or like what you have going for you or maybe going against you, like there will be a time where you will not have a safety net, and that's a really bad time to have your first big failure kind of thing, which a lot of times, truthfully, like people take harder on themselves than maybe the world's going to actually take on them. So like I agree. Like this is a great time where like if you hit something and you don't know the answer and you really struggle, find a way to either do your best, try and learn something from it, or, you know, draw a nice photo on the SAP
diagram.
Yeah, at least the person who's grading it can have something interesting or engaging to look at.
So in full transparency, because at Virtual College Counselors, we deeply value honesty, transparency, and authenticity. It's actually in our logo. I failed 2 of my APA exams. Both I got a 2. One, I didn't even do the DBQ. I literally took the cartoons that they had as articles and just copied them over and made minor edits that made them hilarious in my mind. I doubt anyone else would have laughed at them. Some of them had like secret narwhals in the background, like totally just gave up because I was so burnt out. It was like the 6th one of the year. And I don't regret doing that, but also I don't recommend doing that. The other one was the AP Spanish exam, which is bonkers because I was actually fluent in Spanish at the time. The recording device didn't work. And when the recording device doesn't work, they'll let you re-record, but you have to wait until College Board approves it. So I was sitting in our school's office for 6.5 hours waiting for approval to redo it, redid it a second time. It still didn't record. And that's when I said, you know what? I think I'm okay. I'm not going to do this again.
That's wild.
Yeah. But like, truthfully, like I still got into Ivy League schools. Like failing these exams is by far, like so far from the end of the world. It's not even funny. So like, just do your best. Like, do not sacrifice your mental and physical health for these exams. They are not actually worth it. Yeah. We want you to do as well as you can.
Yeah. The only thing I'll add to that is like, students, it's really important that you remember that these are essentially 4-hour tests on some random day of the week.
Yeah,
they do not determine your worth whatsoever. Like similar to Jess, I think the highest score I ever got on any of my AP exams was a 3. I definitely failed a couple of them. And I went to college, and ironically, I was one of the top students for my major. And some of the AP scores that I got for those subjects, I did not pass. So like how you perform on an AP exam does not, in my opinion, whatsoever predict your ability to succeed in college, particularly in a related course.
No, it's great if you do really well. It doesn't mean anything if you don't. Like there's no interpretation of not doing well on these exams.
Exactly. Yeah. So AP tests are way beyond my time. There was no such thing back when I was in high school, but my kids took them. And I don't recommend this also, but I'll tell a story about my daughter. And in her AP Lang exam for the essay, she just wrote, like, she didn't even like read what the topic was. I think she just like wrote an essay about how ridiculous it was learning how to write for the AP Lang exam, and it like ruined her as a writer. And so like, needless to say, she did not do well on that test. But, you know, I think for her, it was like a way of like, you know, making a point. In her own way. And it didn't hurt her in college admissions at all because she didn't have to report that score. So any of y'all know what the Superman pose is?
Yes, it's a fun pose.
Where did you hear about the Superman pose? Where have you heard about it?
Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah. Okay.
Mine was not Grey's Anatomy. Mine was one of my students when I was teaching overseas would do the Superman pose before any one of my tests. And I didn't actually know what it was at the time, and he was like, Miss Nicole, this is the Superman pose, and then it like clicked in the light bulb, and he was like, I do this because it gives me strength for all of your vocabulary tests. And I was like, Georgie, Keep it up. And he did it for like the rest of the year, honestly. A couple of his friends around would also do it right before test. It was very cute, very cute. So yes, I will agree though, as a result of what I remember Georgie getting on my vocabulary test, it does benefit, in my opinion, in terms of like boosting the confidence.
Yeah.
Going for the goal.
I think mostly. I thought it was anatomy too. That's where I stole it from.
Yeah.
When some kid called me out on it. I think it's been debunked actually, but like it's okay. I'm just going to say hello here.
Confidence is confidence.
Omega Dude. Hello, how are you? Nice to see you here. Thanks for being here with us. Hide that. Okay, so let's see what we're going to talk about next. Okay, so if you're not a senior, so that means if you're a freshman, sophomore, or junior and you're taking the test, right? Like, there's no big deal if you don't take it, like if you except unless you've paid for it, we think you should. We've already kind of done that. But you won't have anything to report. You won't need to report it. The colleges won't be bothered if they see the class but no score. This is all as far as admissions go, like your own high school diet, they have their own rules. But like, I do want you to realize that, and I think y'all have alluded to this already, there are no more subject tests, obviously. For those of you who are younger, you don't even know what they are. So what I'm seeing is that the AP tests are becoming more and more important with some colleges. Nicole, you mentioned particularly the UCs. Do you want to talk about a little bit about that?
Yeah. So out here in California, we, our UC system, University of California system, they will not look or consider SAT or ACT scores anymore. That is an official policy. The Cal State system also has adopted that as of this year. So literally the two state systems for baccalaureate degrees in California will not consider SAT or ACT exams for admission. But notice how I keep saying SAT or ACT exams for admission, IB exams, AP exams. If you as a student somehow manage to get an SAT subject test, like in that very, very last window, which honestly I would doubt for a lot of students to some extent, those scores are fair game in terms of being evaluated as part of the admissions process. And so with my students, when we talk about, whether to report scores or not report scores, I remind them of what I've heard from admissions officers at the UC schools in the sense of like, we will only look at AP scores as something that adds value to your application. So it can only help your application, not hurt it. If you maybe don't have a strong score, it's not like you lose points or you lose ground. It's more of just like, it's a net neutral. And so again, I always tell students they at least want to see that you attempted the exam. And remember, admissions officers are humans too. Like they understand that it's possible, like, I don't know, your prom date could have broken up with you the day before your AP bio test, right? Or like maybe something happened in your family and you weren't able to necessarily get breakfast that morning or something, right? Again, these are 4-hour tests on a Tuesday. And so I always tell students, do the very, very best you can. Know that at some schools, it may matter. And if you maybe get a score and there's context around that you'd like to share that is actually meaningful, it's something maybe to consider doing. But, this isn't going to be maybe the make it or break it thing. It never is. But sometimes I think it's also important for us to mention that at least out here in California, they are fair game for the UCs to use and consider to evaluate. And I think this is where students, should do your very best, but also know that it's not the end of the world if something happens.
Okay. Jess and Sawyer, anything to add, or other colleges that like are starting to kind of consider their importance a little bit more?
I think there's quite a few. One that's historically just really loved scores is Georgetown. They've required historically and will continue to require every score be sent. Even during the pandemic when they were test optional, if you had test scores, they expected to see them. How they would find out if it's like not on your transcript, I don't know. They're expecting you to be honest. That's like a pillar of their education system. But most schools do want to see, like if you took an AP class, they want to see a score. And just so you know, like in the context of admissions, there are high schools in this country that require students to take those exams to pass their high school classes. So if you are at one of those schools, please take the exam no matter what. Otherwise, you can't get your diploma conferred and then you can't go to college. Like that's how you get admissions rescinded. Without graduating high school. Please graduate or GED or whatever that looks like. But outside of that, like most schools are looking at them. Every admissions officer that I have spoken with in the past 2 years, probably more, but like specifically the past 2 years, because we're talking about pandemic admissions, they do matter if you have the ability to take them. But like within reason. There were obviously if you are kind of a senior right now, you probably took some AP class or AP tests in what year was that? 2020? Time's irrelevant. But in 2020, when it was like at home, and if there was any movement in your background, your score got canceled. Like, there are clearly exceptions to the rule, and you are read in context, but you're read in the context of not only your own school and your own state, but you're also read in the context of everyone else who's applying, which is another reason why it's like super important to keep doing this, which didn't answer your question, but I think it was important to say.
No, it was good. That was really good.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, because these are all really great points, and I'll keep mine relatively brief, is when I think back to reviewing, and admittedly, like I was very fortunate. Hendrix College is not like ultra selective in the typical sense. Like, the students who apply there are usually within the middle 50%, which, depending on, I don't know what it is now, but while I was there, a 3.7 to a 4.2 GPA and like a 26 to a 32 ACT. So I loved working at a school where it wasn't a super big name, because I didn't have to deny a lot of students. Like, we had a relatively high acceptance rate, and that was awesome, because I love delivering good news. But I can definitely say AP scores were always beneficial. I don't think there was a single time in like the 4.5 years I worked there that any admission officer that I worked with was like, oh, they got a 1. Like, I guess we're just going to can everything they've done for the past 4 years and throw them down the chute. That was not something they were always seen as brags, right? Like, oh man, not only is a student doing great in this and that, and they got a job and they take care of their grandmother, and they've also, they're doing football, but hey, they also got like a 3 and a 4 and a 5, like, great for them. I do think there's an interesting, like, maybe a philosophical side of this question, which is probably not for now, but maybe for later, which is there a benefit, or are there AP tests that could provide value to like an admissions perspective? So like, the first thing that makes me think of it is being someone who studied history. I think one of the best uses of like my time studying history is like learning to synthesize information into very digestible and easily readable kind of like portions. So like, it makes me think of like the writing in AP exams in particular. Being able to take a bunch of documents that you just got thrown at you and like trying to turn it into a narrative or reinforce a point. I remember like AP Lang, this is my teacher got mad at me, but I got a good score, so I guess it worked out. But we had this one, and it was talking about satire. And at the time, I was like a high school boy, and like, my first thing when I thought of satire, the Colbert Report was really taking off.
I wrote mine about that. Sorry, totally random.
And then it was the Colbert Report, the Chappelle Show, and South Park were my three pillars. No, The Onion didn't make the list. I was not a big Onion person. But anyways, all that to say, like, I think there could be a world in which, like, maybe if we could see like more detailed AP results, like, there could be something to say like, hey, the student has a college level writing ability. Maybe they can synthesize information well. At least while I was in admission, we obviously did not have, or maybe not obviously, but we did not have access to detailed reports. We just saw, what did you take? What score did you get? And that's assuming you sent it to us. But I do think there is an interesting world in which maybe some of these could like really show like a stronger side of students that might actually be really beneficial. But I don't know how that would look in a practical application.
Well, one of the high schools that we work for they don't offer AP classes. So I think there's 1 or 2 students who have taken an AP class, and it was like through UC Scout and like, very, very much geared for them. But a lot of those students still take AP tests in the courses that they did take, even though they didn't take the class. At least when you're in the AP class, you are literally being taught for the test. That is like the actual curriculum for your AP classes is pretty universal across the board. But just throwing that out there so that if students are watching this thinking about AP exams outside the context of classes, they can be a really great way of showing mastery of a subject. Not scoring well doesn't mean you haven't mastered the subject. It's just one indicator that might be helpful.
Yeah, I was actually going to make that point, especially I think for sophomores and freshmen right now, if you're watching, or their parents. There are kids who take a variety, like they sign up and take a lot of AP tests next year, or, like through, because you can only take them in May. So it's not like it's going to really help you juniors at this point. But and certainly not seniors. But you can take AP tests, and especially international kids. This can be beneficial to them, just to kind of like show the context of their transcript and show that like they're learning the material or they're self-teaching the material. So I never like suggest not taking AP tests. If you're a good test taker, especially, use that to your advantage. You know, if you're like have major league test anxiety, like, no, I'm not going to say like go take as many tests as you can, because who needs that kind of stress in your life? But if you're a good test taker and testing doesn't stress you out and you can afford it, because they are expensive, then I say go ahead and take them. I was going to bring that up, to take extra tests. The other point I wanted to kind of really go over that you said, Nicole, because I'm not sure I have a slide about this, but I should, is context is really important. 2 years ago, when y'all were when the people were testing at home, I was working with a girl on Reddit who literally took her AP test in the back of her car at McDonald's while her mom, because they didn't have internet access at their house, while her mom was in the front seat with her siblings. And that's how she had to take her test. And like, you know, she didn't do like amazingly well. I mean, because of the context. I mean, I think she did pretty well, but not like as well as she might have been able to do had she been at school. And, you know, like definitely getting the context of like telling them your story, explaining what happened here. Like I was like, yeah, you definitely need to share your scores so they can know you took the test, and you need to tell them the story. So telling context is really important if you've had something, or if like you went and took the test, but you just had a death in the family or whatever, like be sure you tell the story if it affected your score.
Or if you have like a weird school schedule, like my high school was on a 4x4 schedule where we took a year's worth of a class each semester. So by the time AP test rolled around, and I went to high school in San Diego, so like California schools that go through like mid-June, by the time AP test rolled around, I was either out of a class for 3 months, and that was totally not in my brain anymore, or still had a month and a half left of a class, which is a significant portion if you factor in the fact that that's actually 3 months worth of the class. So that was already completely bonkers. And then even crazier things happened during COVID. Boulder Valley School District switched to this really strange schedule, not sure why, where students had a quarter of certain classes, and then the next quarter was different classes.
Oh, yeah.
And then they went back to the first set of classes. So they had 9 weeks in between their first half of calculus and their second half of calculus. And then several more weeks before the exam. Like yeah, just totally crazy. But if you have the opportunity to provide context,
yes,
100%. The point being, provide all the context that you can. Don't talk as much as I do about it, but like quick and dirty, 2 sentences, get it done.
Context matters. Colleges want to hear. It's not making excuses. It's not trying to make them feel sorry for you. They want to know. And the only way they can know, and this applies in any aspect of college admissions when you're telling your context, the only way they can know is if you tell them. I mean, Sawyer, can you back me up on that? Like,
yeah, no, 100%. And I was gonna chime in at the very end after relevant things have been said on this side. But yeah, context super important, because something that I think, and of course every school is different. So, you know, with a grain of salt, maybe a tablespoon full of salt. But one thing that I would always tell students is like, I cannot make up a story for a student, right? If I'm reading like, the classic example is, let's say I see like, you know, a 3.5-year transcript, and like freshman year is great, sophomore year is great, junior year, we see this really big dip. And then we kind of see it maybe picking up if we're fortunate enough to see like what's happening first semester, senior year. I know there's probably a story there. And I worked at a school that was small enough where I could actually maybe like reach out to a student, or I could put them maybe on the back burner and like ask for more context. But as much as I want to advocate for students, and I think that should be the job of all admission counselors, is looking for reasons to admit, not deny, that well-known phrase. It's one of those things where I can't make it up for students. So you have to tell me. And if you tell me, you know, admission counselors, depending on where they work, sometimes they have very little power and they can't really move too much of the machine. In other places, especially in maybe like all you small liberal arts schools, as an example, because we tend to be like very hands-on with our territory and our students, I made huge decisions on behalf of my students and could make pretty big waves. So it's one of those things where context is so important, whether it's grades or ACT or any number of things that you feel like we should know to understand your story a little bit better. And that can be really, really crucial.
Great. Perfect.
There's one thing I want to just add really quickly, Carolyn, because I know we're on this slide that says if you're not a senior. So I'm speaking out to like all of the non-seniors.
Right.
Especially when it comes to the cost of AP exams. I mean, everybody in this call has heard me talk about how I think the cost of an AP exam is insane personally for each exam. I think it's like $70 or something now per exam. And that's, by the way, assuming that you're in a school site setting. If you're like a homeschool student or a student that needs to go to a school site, there's generally additional testing fees. So they can sometimes go up to like $250 a test. If you are not affiliated with that school, like it can get really bananas. But if you are a student where, you maybe didn't own Twitter stock this year, where like financially your family has really taken a hit and the cost of these tests will be a factor for next year, please start talking to the school counseling officials or the AP testing coordinator, whoever it is at your high school that will hopefully be able to help you get some of those fee waivers if you know that's something you're going to need. Because starting to get those advocates, understanding your story, understand that might be something that they need to share with schools when they send off their documents is something that I really encourage, especially younger students, to please be proactive about, because those of us that are in this profession want to make it easier for you. So please utilize that as much as possible and save yourself some bucks, because those things are not, they are not cheap. It's wild. I think it used to be only like $35 when I was in high school for a test. It was not that crazy.
Well, and 35 even can be a stretch for a lot of kids.
Totally.
Doing, more than one or two. So I agree. Yeah. Try to get those fee waivers. And that comes from being proactive and being willing to ask questions and talk. Okay. Now, if you are a senior, and this is, we have like all these little things I want to go through because of the UC schools, which we've touched on a little bit. But so like we recommended that you take them, but let's say you don't. So I have a lot of kids saying, am I going to be rescinded because I'm not going to take the test? So like, I don't want to pay for it, mostly is why they're like doing it, or I didn't pay for it, or like, I just didn't study at all. So what's going to happen if they don't take the test?
It depends on their school. If they're at one of those high schools that requires the test to pass a class, they're not going to be able to graduate. So make sure that like through your high school, it's okay to not take it before you make that executive decision. I've seen it happen. It is devastating because schools have to rescind admission because you are no longer technically graduated. So that's a huge thing. Outside of that, I don't know of a single school off the top of my head that would somehow find that to be a problem. Because again, there's infinite reasons why you might not be able to take the exam. If you get COVID, please don't go take this test. And then if you're not available on the makeup day, what are you supposed to do? Like, there are always exceptions to the rule.
There are categories of schools though that I think we got to be really careful about to mention here, and those are the international schools, because I know we have some kids maybe from other parts of the world that are applying to institutions where they have received conditional offers that are potentially dependent upon scores. So if you are a student that, even here in the United States, if you applied to schools internationally and your admissions is conditional upon you receiving certain scores for the subjects that you indicated you are taking for the program of study, that is where you really cannot blow off the test. And hopefully that is something that you have been aware of within your offer letter. But I would say for, U.S. institutions, they're not going to care, honestly. But if you are applying to institutions where your offer is conditional upon scores being received that are of a certain, a letter or grade or higher, that is going to be something to make sure to be on top of. And especially if you get sick the day before and have to do the makeup test, that's something I tell students if you're in that context to make sure you know who to talk to about that.
So last year, it was on Berkeley's website, and I don't have the link to it. And then they were tweeting about it and trying to clarify things. They wanted to know, they didn't want you to just not submit your scores. Like, if you weren't going to take a test, you actually had to let them know that you weren't going to take a test.
I think I know why that is, by the way, or I have a hunch for it. Because I've seen this happen before, where on the back end, right, like when a student fills out their UC application, they're indicating what test they're sending, right? And so if I send off the acceptance, and I'm going to use Berkeley as the hypothetical here because it's on the slide, and I see at, Berkeley, when the student sends off their score report, I don't see that. That's going to be auto flagged in the system. So my hunch, and I would love to call someone at Berkeley and ask, but is that they don't want to have to, like, honestly, they probably don't want like thousands of emails from kids panicking about their admissions being rescinded because they didn't let them know. And so I think it's really them trying to prevent panic, albeit clearly based off of the Twitter thread from last year, it didn't really necessarily go so hot.
Right.
I think so. Outside of the UCs, we're going to just talk California because there's such huge systems, and they also often reflect the rest of the country. The Cal States, for example, there's a lot of those schools that humans don't even touch the application. So if you've indicated that you'll be sending that score and it doesn't get sent, they get their final transcript and everything, they're going to think a document's missing, and they're going to hound you about this missing document, and you won't have that document to fulfill it. So at bare minimum, it's going to be a huge pain to navigate because you have to get in touch with a person, and they're not easy to get in touch with all the time. It will be summer. They're not always around, or they're busy with other things. It can be a huge headache.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And again, I've had here, like, if you're not happy with your scores or you feel like they don't reflect who you are, but a college is requiring you to submit them, tell your situation. Don't hesitate to give the context. I said in the additional information section, but that's that doesn't.
Right.
We're just kind of sitting. Yeah. So that's if you are a senior, and then like what to report, how to report. And I feel like they should report all their 4s and 5s. There are some people who feel like for certain schools, they shouldn't report 4s.
That's not a thing. Every single school, if you get a 4, that at least shows that you can do the work.
Yeah.
Okay. And I hesitate to encourage my students to send 3s. What do you guys say?
So this is where, okay, so I might differ a little bit, but that's just mostly because I might be reliving the whole I was proud that I actually passed a few of them. I generally recommend, sending or reporting scores of 3s or above, except those schools where we know the scores potentially are going to be a differentiator, right? I call them the sweatshirt schools, the bumper sticker schools, the ones where you just mentioned I went to a college in Boston and people know, right? And so in my mind, I think if it is one of those like more selective institutions, that's where I would go with the 4s and the 5s. But I do think, if I'm applying to a school where, let's say I have a bunch of AP classes on my transcript and I only report 4s and 5s, but let's say I have 2 or 3 3s from those other AP tests, I actually think that's potentially bringing more questions into the fold. And so, oh my gosh, there's a dog down there. Total random. I'm always distracted by a pet, as everybody knows. So I'm pro like 3 or above generally. 4s and 5s for more selective institutions. That's just mostly because I think that students passing AP exams, especially in the light of the last 2 years that we have all had collectively as a civilization, is really remarkable in of itself. And so I'm okay with 3s. I'm team 3 most of the time.
Yeah.
What about y'all?
That, and also like a lot of schools, including the UCs, will give you credit for those 3s. And it's unfortunately not every school is super transparent about that. And as prospective students, most like registrar's offices and like whoever else needs to be able to talk to students won't talk to prospective students until you're actually enrolled. And so you can't really ask about like, well, which ones of these credits might transfer? Like not every school actually is transparent about that. Better safe than sorry. If you don't submit during the application process, I was one of them. There were a few scores that I did not submit for no reason. Like I didn't think about it. I was only thinking about like some of the good ones, and I certainly wasn't putting the ones that I failed because I like didn't finish the exam. But that actually wound up hurting me. So I was still able to graduate in 3 years. My school never input my AP scores into the system. I fought with them for 3 entire years. And I wound up being able to graduate early because I just took extra classes. And I got like special waivers for that. It was a huge pain.
So horrible. Sorry, Jess. I'm like still so mad about that for you.
I'm a self-advocate. I don't know if you guys could tell, but like I'm a talker. Like I will get stuff done. This was an impossible journey. So like, because I failed to actually submit stuff, that became a problem.
My my 2 cents for it. 4s and 5s, I think, are excellent, and you should be proud of them, and you should submit them. And if a 4 is going to sink your chances at a school, I suggest going to another school. That's my own opinion. And for 3s, I think you should be happy with a 3. I also think that there is I'll say an unofficial AP hierarchy, maybe. And there are some APs that people tend to view as more challenging than others, and that is not lost on admission offices. If you're wondering what those are and you want to get maybe less hearsay, just Google a bunch of schools and look at what their AP score equivalencies are and see which ones they accept as 3s, because there's quite a few that will kind of fall under that. I think if you want to play it safe, maybe send those 3s with those maybe more perceived challenging AP tests. But I also think a 3 is nothing to stick up your nose at. It reminds me a lot of when a student gets a solid ACT score but it's not amazing, and then they're like, it's all over, I failed. And it's okay, let's take a step back. That's a perfectly fine score, and you've got a lot more than just your score to work with here.
I think it's also really important to kind of bring in the conversation about context, right? Students are always evaluating the context of their environments. So you could have a high school, and I think I'm from Northern California. When I say Northern California, I mean north of San Francisco, California, right? So I know of school districts where they may only have had 4 AP classes at a high school, and they maybe had 2 or 3 kids that scored in 4 and 5 range a year. And so I think students, one thing to kind of consider with AP scores is on a national level, that 3 maybe isn't so amazing, but within the context of your high school, it might actually be really remarkable depending on where you're at and the kind of resources and allocations and everything. So I think it's really being mindful of kind of where do you sit within your ecosphere in some ways, because that's where it starts to get really fun with counseling students. That's where we get to really kind of think about crafting that application almost as an argumentative debate case, which, shocking to no one on this call, I imagine, is that what I did it all in when I was in high school and college. And so students, I think, my hope is when you leave this part, this slide, so to speak, it's that you realize, take the test, do the very, very best that you can on them. It will only help you. It will not hurt you. And be mindful and thoughtful about what information you choose to share. And that may differ depending on the college that you're applying to. And that is absolutely okay. Nothing needs to be uniform, but make sure that you bring that context if it's needed. So that way that person, you are giving them the best possible chance to evaluate your application in the most honest light possible, really.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think the context of your high school is huge. And if, in some high schools, a 3 might be the top score that anybody got in the high school. And then I would definitely send that and let them know. For sure. I mean, I say the same thing about, ACT and SAT, especially for, even if your score is well below the 50th percentile of the college, if it's at the top of your high school, you need to send it and let them know where you fit within that range at your own high school, because colleges want to consider that and kind of weigh those choices.
And your high school will get, your high school students will also get that data, by the way. They will see, who scored in on AP Bio, for example, who was it that scored in the 5, 4, and 3 range. So if you're not sure where you sit in that pack, go talk to the counseling staff at your school or the AP testing coordinator. Somebody's getting that data, and you can kind of ask them, and that can maybe inform what you choose to share. Sorry, Sawyer.
No, yeah. And that's all I was going to say is that an important term, and once again, some schools use this more than others, but school groups, right? So looking at so for example, one of the things I liked about my territory recruiting at Hendrix is that I had a lot of the Southeast, but I did not have any in-state territory for most of my time recruiting. And I liked it that way because it meant that maybe I got 3 applications from a school, depending on where it was. And so I never really had to worry about school grouping too much, but it is something that it gets kind of finicky, because when you have 50 applications coming from one large public school that tends to be a feeder school, those bottom 25 students that might have been admitted if they were at another school might not make the cut, because then it puts the school in a position where they have to make that argument, right? Like, why did the valedictorian get admitted, and why like number like 150 out of 400 get admitted? So that's something, the context of a school is hugely important. Like, what courses they offer, what scores, what is the general academic maybe quality or threshold of the high school or the area you're coming from. Many colleges have very expensive formulas and consultants that will calculate what they perceive as like the academic quality of a high school. So I do think that's something that is important. If you haven't thought about that yet as a high schooler, don't get super crazy about it. Like, don't start like trying to trample over your friends because you want to be like so much better than them. But like, absolutely, like, realize that there is a context outside of like the national context.
Yeah, that's huge. Great. Those are all great points. One last thing I'm just going to say about this slide is that Carly adds all the slides to the comments on the YouTube channel. And so if you want that link to somehow, if you decide you want to cancel your scores, you'll be able to get to that link because they'll be added there later. So, and then let's see. All right. And then college credit, which really doesn't have much to do with admissions, but just to kind of keep in mind, I think something that a lot of kids don't realize is that many highly selective / rejective colleges don't give any credit for them. And so it's not like you've been possibly told in your high school, like, if you do take all these classes and get all these scores, you're going to be able to skip out of a year of college, because it doesn't necessarily work that way in some of those colleges, but in others, it does definitely work that way. So kind of just be aware of that, but they still really like them for admissions. So still keep it down.
This is why I tell all of my senior students when they come kind of like moaning and groaning about like, do I have to take it? I say, look, even if you are just awarded elective credit, like, it literally doesn't count for academics. That is an earlier registration time, potentially. That is a better housing slot registration time, because students, it's really important that you know, when we talk about credits for AP exams, and again, this is very dependent upon the college, but you'll generally see this more at public state institutions because of state policies that they have in place. But at least here in California, you know, I'll pick on UC Santa Barbara because it's a beautiful school and I'm dreaming about the beach right now. They are very, very generous with the way that they award credit for students. I have some students this year that if they perform well on their AP exams, they are potentially getting half a year's worth of AP credit they're bringing in, which means that the next time they have to register for classes, they are half a year ahead of everybody else in their class potentially, which, especially if you're at some of these larger schools, that is everything. Because I don't know about you, y'all, I do not want an 8 a.m. chem lab lecture on a Friday. That sounds horrible. My version of pain, really, chemistry at any time of day. And so I think it's important that when, in terms of whether your scores will count for college credit, even if you don't get out of specific courses, you can at least improve what your actual like standing is on paper at that school. So, you know, for example, if you bring in enough credit, even though you are still a first year in college, you may be on paper, because of all of that credit, a sophomore or a second semester, student. And that can be really, really critical when it comes to some of these registration-y things on a campus.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I'll add here, and this is almost to our parents, if there are any parents out there watching this in the future.
They watch later.
This comes up a lot. I used to have this conversation a lot on the admissions side when it comes to like a lot of times when parents, if they are fortunate enough to be able to shop around for a high school, a lot of times they'll be like, oh, I want like the best kind of college prep school, whether that's like a really good charter school or just a strong public school or like a private or independent school. And there is a very, very intentional marketing game that goes into this on the high school side of like, hey, like your kid's going to come in here, and because you pay all this money right now and they take these hard tests, like you're going to save money in the long run because they're going to have all these credits. Be careful of that marketing because it becomes this minefield of yes, but, or no, but, and like, that's not really like the high school sometimes has like very good pathways, which they can show you like, hey, like within our state, we are going to be so awesome. once you leave our state, like those transfer credits get a little bit iffy. Like, what does that look like across state lines? Or like a lot of people will be like, oh, we've got so many AP courses, so your student can take all these AP courses. Imagine we'll come in as a sophomore, and then like the parents are like, woo, like merit-based aid and one less year, like that sounds delicious. And like a lot of times what ends up happening is like there's a max on the credits they can bring in. Maybe if they do a dual enrollment program, those don't all go over. Sometimes the registrar does not see the course equivalency because a course might be missing a piece that it needs. So that's just a little aside when we talk about like AP, IB, dual enrollment, all those kinds of things, and college credit. Like it's never quite as rosy. So my suggestion for parents is, if that is something that they're selling you, ask for like, okay, what are some very hard examples that we can talk about? Because that will help in the long run, not only the parents and the students, but also the admission counselors, who then have to be like, no, that's not how it works. Like, just because you had like four fours or 4 5s, like that's super awesome and we're glad to have you, but like you're not graduating a year early. Like you're probably going to end up having to take just as many years.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of students don't realize is like, even if your school does accept all the AP credit, we do have students who go in, sophomore or sometimes junior standing. But that doesn't mean you actually graduate early.
Yeah.
Because the way that colleges work, like most colleges have a core curriculum outside of like, there's like fewer than 10 in the country that don't. So like you have your core curriculum, you have your major. Some schools require you to minor or double major. And then there's all the courses you need to take outside of your major and the core curriculum and stuff. So like if those credits can't count for those classes, sure, you get the college credit, but that doesn't mean you actually leave the campus early. If you have questions about leaving campus early, though, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, this is a minefield that all of us on this call could like dive into, because it is so school dependent. And I think the last thing I would say about this, especially for the seniors that are watching, is be mindful, even if you are awarded class equivalency, of doing so. I speak that, one of the things I talk a lot about is I have a lot of students that want to go to medical school, and I have a lot of them that are like, oh my gosh, I get to skip the intro bio sequence if I get a 5 on the AP bio test. And I'm like, nope, you don't. Because even if you do, guess what? Medical schools are not going to like that. And they're actually not even going to consider you having fulfilled their intro bio requirement if you do that. And so I think students, when it comes to kind of the credit system, again, this is where just to what Sawyer is saying, be very, very mindful of like kind of how rosy those pictures are painted, particularly because policies change. Just because something is the case when you were a sophomore in high school does not necessarily mean it will be that way when you matriculate as a first year there. Policies change, score counts, that matter is going to change. And so just check on it every year, I guess.
Yeah.
No, I was going to bring up the pre-med point too, is that like medical schools don't count AP test as part of your pre-med prep. And the other thing is like, just because you do like get a 5 on AP Calc doesn't mean you want to take the next level of math. If you're not going to be a math major, if you're going to be a math major or something, sure, I'm sure you're ready for it. But if you have to take a math on campus, and you might not want to take DiffyQ or multivariable calculus. You might want to take calculus again. I am speaking from personal experience from a long time ago. So, placing out of it doesn't necessarily mean that you want to move to the next level. So just kind of be cognizant of it and what you're doing. I think that's the last slide. It is. So I'm going to take our slides off. And I'm going to say thank you to you all. You gave like such incredible, amazing advice. And I really appreciate your being here. So Nicole, we are going to do like a 1-minute little mindfulness thing. Are you cool with that?
Oh, I love mindfulness. Let's do it.
Okay, awesome. Carly, you want to join us?
Hi.
Hi. Carly, Nicole, Carly. So thank goodness for Carly, because she saw you down there. You were below my like, I can't even see that you're here. So thank you, Carly.
Thanks, Carly.
For doing that. Okay, so I'm going to get my bowl. So I want to start, just because we talked about it a little bit already, I want to start with the Superman pose. So we don't have to stand up, but basically it's like taking your arms and putting your hands on your hips and like stretching your shoulders back if you can, and then like really just allowing yourself to fill your lungs with air and maybe even your belly. So like just pull in big breath and just like fill it up. And then we're gonna let it go in a big whoosh. So that was just to kind of get it started. Now you can put your hands wherever you want, whatever's comfortable for you. So we're going to do just like 1 little minute, what's called box breathing. Are any of you familiar with box breathing? Okay, great. If you are, great. I might do it differently. But basically what we're going to do is make a box with our breath. So we're going to do 4 counts up, 4 counts across, 4 counts down, and 4 counts across. All right. And so if you're comfortable closing your eyes, go ahead and close your eyes. Put your hands in a comfortable position. And I want you to just imagine in your head a square. And we're going to start at the bottom right corner of the square. And we're going to breathe up a line that goes from the bottom right corner to the top right corner. And I just want you to breathe 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to exhale and we're going to go across from the top right corner to the top left corner. So exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then inhale down. 2, 3, 4. And then exhale across. 2, 3, 4. And I'm just going to guide you through that 2 more times, and then I'm going to let you do it once on your own. So we're going to inhale up. 2, 3, 4. Exhale across. 2, 3, 4. Inhale down. 2, 3, 4. Exhale across. 2, 3, 4. One more time. Inhale up. 2, 3, 4. Exhale across. 2, 3, 4. Inhale down. 2, 3, 4. Exhale across. 2, 3. You can do one in your own head, like a square. And when I ring my bell, you can open your eyes, or you can just be here with me. Okay. Thank you so much for being here. Y'all are awesome. Will you please come back?
Oh heck yeah! Especially if I get to hang out with this crew. Like Carly obviously is a rock star. Jess and Sawyer are amazing, and I feel so calm right now, Carolyn. That was like college yoga. I feel like.
Oh, good. I'm glad. So yeah, I'm going to take a little bit of a break for visiting my daughter in California, and then we're going to IECA where we are presenting. Sawyer, are you presenting with us?
I was about to say, I'm trying to think. I'm presenting a lot of things, to be honest.
We have too many presentations.
Oh my goodness.
Sawyer's popular.
It's just a presentation we have that put on the same day. So we're hosting a workshop and then a few breakouts, and it was too much for us to do all of it.
I think I might have signed up for your workshop. I can't remember. I know I remember seeing it. It looked great.
I feel like we could do this live stream all together though at conference if we ever had time, honestly.
Yeah.
That would be so fun actually.
It would be fun. But I'm taking a break.
Yes, we should take a break.
When you're done with your break.
What'd you say?
When you're done with your break.
Yeah, when I'm done with my break, for sure. No, I want to have y'all back. I'm going to be coming back the last week of May. I haven't totally determined I usually can tell like everybody what I'm going to be doing the next week. I did know what I wanted to do, but with everything that's happening in the world right now, I'm kind of feeling drawn to talking about using state laws to create your college list for trans students, LGBTQ students, and women, and men who love women. So basically everyone. So if y'all want to come talk to me about that in a few weeks, that'd be great. Just let me know. And then I'll be back in June for good to finish out the year. So, but I'm taking a couple of weeks off right now. So anyway, thank you very, very much. Thank you everybody who was here with us tonight. Those of you who are watching in the future, thank you for joining us at Badass College Apps, where we talk about applying to college. And Carly, I'm going to let you finish up for me today.
And stop and take a breath.
Thank you, Carly. And let's all take a big deep breath. And let it out. All right. I'm going to end the broadcast, but don't go anywhere. Bye, everybody.